This is my friend Peter Martin.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Peter Martin.
Peter Martin plays the piano. Now, I know Peter pretty well, and Peter loves three things: his family, running, and tritone substitutions. Why does Peter love tritone subs? Because they sound like this. I mean, who wouldn't love tritone subs if you could play them like that? My name's Adam Annis, and today we're talking all about tritone subs. More specifically, four very important questions. What is a tritone sub? How do I use it? What kind of scales go with tritone subs, which is a question I get all the time around here. And how do I practice them? I think you're going to find that this sound is a sound that you already know and you already love. And hopefully we can dig in to these tritone subs a little bit, get into this beautiful sound, and practice ways of having it come out in our playing naturally. So, what is a tritone sub? Well, specifically, it's this. If we have a 5-1 here in the key of C, right? Just a regular old first piano lesson 5-1 cadence, G7 to C major, we can, on any dominant 7 chord, we can sub out a dominant 7 chord from a tritone away. So if we have G7 to C major, what's a tritone away from G? D flat. So instead of G7, we can substitute D flat 7 going to our C major. That's all it is. Very basic, yeah? One interesting thing to think about with these tritone subs that kind of makes it easy is to realize that the tritone, right? If we swap out D flat for G7 for a 5-1, the tritone is just a half step up from our C major 9 chord, right? From our target chord, whatever target chord that may be. If you play a dominant 7 chord, a half step above it as you head into it, right? If you lead into your target with a dominant 7 chord from a half step above, that's playing a tritone sub. That's really the basic tritone sub. It makes it much easier to think, okay, what's the 5 and what's the tritone of the 5? Just think a half step up from your target, dominant 7 chord, and you're good to go. Now, one thing about the kind of chords, once you get kind of more advanced with this, you'll realize that you can kind of use any chord you want for the type of chord, but really to get the dominant 7 sound in there first is the way to go, because that is the sound you hear more often. It's certainly the most common way to use tritone subs, and it's kind of the easiest to make sound good. One very important thing to note is that there are really two common ways to use tritone subs. The first is the way that I've already shown you here, where you completely substitute the 5 chord for its tritone dominant, right? But there's another way too, and it's just as valid, and it's the way that we're going to be practicing them today. And that's to include the dominant 7 and its tritone in the same phrase here. So if we have G7 going to C major, we can still play the G7, but also play the D flat 7 going into the C major. This is what we saw Peter Martin doing there in his All the Things You Are a lot. He was not just completely subbing out, but he might hint at the 5 and then play the tritone sub. This is just chef's kiss for building tension and releasing tension, which, by the way, is all tritone subs do. They're there so that we can get out of a diatonic 5-1 relationship, right? We can add a little bit more tension. And we'll talk about the scales that we can use to help really ratchet that tension up even more. So before we start practicing our tritone subs, there's one more thing that we need to talk about. We're talking about substituting the 5 chord in a 5-1 situation, but it doesn't have to be the diatonic 5 chord. Did you know that practically any chord in any song you play can have a little sneaky 5 chord right before it? You can lead into your chord with a 5 chord. Mamma mia, yes, 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 yes. You totally can. So check this out. Here we have a little chord progression, C major to A dominant, right? Maybe it's a 1 chord in the key of C. We're going to the 6 chord. You know, maybe we're going back to the 2 eventually. That doesn't really matter. Did you know that if you wanted to, without telling anybody about it, you don't have to let anybody know, you can kind of sneak in a 5 chord before your 6 chord, right? Pretty much always, pretty much in any chord. Now, this is something that you want to use very sparingly. This is the seasoning, so you don't want to over season your rice here, but you can, if you want to add some tension, at any point, add a 5 chord before whatever chord you're heading to, and that means that you can also add the tritone sub. Now, in a lot of instances, the tritone sub's actually going to be the better sounding choice than an actual 5 chord because it doesn't establish some kind of new major scale harmony, right? It kind of takes you out of it. So listen to the difference between adding just a regular 5 chord in E7 before our A9 or the tritone sub, right? What's the tritone of E? B flat. So instead of E7, we could play B flat 7 or here B flat 9, right? Kind of has a Yardbird suite. Right? That kind of sound is just magical. So literally, whatever chord progression you're playing, whatever tune you're playing, if you want to throw in a tritone sub, remember, the dominant chord a half step above your target, it's going to sound pretty good. As long as you do it skillfully and don't overuse it, which we're going to work on here today, it's going to sound great. And I think this is a sound that a lot of you are going to be like, that's the sound I've been looking for. And it really can help elevate our playing and add just that extra little bit of tension to what we're doing. Like I said, completely in the moment. You don't have to call your mom and tell her you're going to do it. You don't have to tell the bass player or the horn players you're going to do it. It's just a way to sneak in a little bit of tension to where we're going. And using the tritone sub, because it has that half step from the half step above resolving down, it kind of just, it is a little bit of sneaky, it's like a little sneaky move you can do. All right, are we doing this? I think we're doing this. Let's work on some tritone subs. Listen, before we get going, if this is the kind of content you want to see from us, please click that like button so we know what you like. You might also subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And I mean, if you want to, you could even put the bell on so that you get notifications for when we're going live and when we're releasing new videos. All right, let's do it. Do it. Okay, so before we get into actually practicing tritone subs, the number one thing that people ask me about this is what do I do with the tritone sub? What kind of chord is it and what kind of notes can I play over it? Well, you can play really anything over it, any kind of chord and any kind of scale, but we're mostly going to be focusing on a dominant 7 sharp 11 sound, the Lydian dominant scale, right? The Lydian dominant chord, this kind of chord, right? Where you have a dominant 7 chord with that raised fourth, that sharp 11, right? So you still have the 5th in there, but you get that nice raised fourth. So here in C, a C dominant 7, a C Lydian dominant scale is C, D, E, raised fourth, F sharp, G, A, dominant 7th, and then we're back to the root there. So this is what we're going to be using for every single one of our tritone subs today. And we're going to be working on tritone subs in a 2-5-1 chord progression. And we're going to take our time with it. So here we have a 2-5-1 in C, and I chose C for a very specific reason here. I even chose our 6 chord in C for a very specific reason. So we're going to use a D minor 9, and you don't have to be a piano player to practice with us today. We're just improvising over a 2-5-1 in C. So no matter what instrument you're on, you can definitely join in here. But I do have some voicings for my pianist in case you want to get in there. Very simple 4-note, 6-shaped kind of voicings. So we have our 2 chord D minor 9. Then we have our 5 chord G9. Now remember, we can sub out the G9, the 5, going to the 1 by using a dominant 7 sharp 11 chord from a tritone away, from that flat 5th away. Right? So that's D flat 7. Now, I want to use the Lydian dominant 7, or so the Lydian dominant sound for a very specific reason. Because the Lydian dominant, it doesn't belong to major scale harmony, right? It's not a mode of the major scale. It's a mode of the melodic minor scale. So it doesn't feel like, when we play the D flat 7, it doesn't feel like we're heading to the key of G flat major, right? There's no G flat in the D flat 7 sharp 11 scale, that Lydian dominant scale. So it feels a lot more ambiguous than if we just played a D flat mixolydian. That wants to end up on G flat. No. If we use that sharp 11 sound, right? That not only does it not have a G flat in it, but this G actually helps tie it to our C major. So for all of the tritone subs, we're going to be using a dominant 7, sharp 11 sound. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of what you might do, a bit of common language for these tritone subs, for these Lydian dominant. Like a lot of people ask me, well, what do I play over Lydian dominant? It's kind of hard to hear sometimes, but there's so many good leading tones that we can get. So if we have our D minor 7, our G9, right? We're going to, on the very last beat, we're going to wait all the way to beat 4 to sub out our D flat 7, sharp 11. I'm going to give you this bit of language just down that Lydian dominant scale. And then we're going to land on the 3rd of C. And you can do that if you want, or you can play your own thing over the D flat Lydian dominant. Remember, D flat Lydian dominant, it's just a major scale with a raised 4th and a dominant 7th. So like a C flat there. But if you're new to this, you might just play my language here. And then we're going to take this through each one of these chords, because remember, you can make a 5 chord go to any chord. And if you can make a 5 chord, you can do the tritone sub. If all of that seems very confusing, just know you can approach any chord from a half step up using this dominant 7, sharp 11. And how great is that? Okay, let's give this a go. So one of the reasons why I chose C and one of the reasons why I chose A minor 7 as our 6th chord is because all of these chords, except for the tritone sub, you can improvise using diatonic C major scales, right? You can essentially just play all the white keys on a piano if you want. Of course, you can use as much chromaticism, enclosures, take it out as much as you want. But what's really great about tritone subs is they do give us this opportunity to take it out of the diatonic key in a very easy to understand way. Like you're not adding crazy extensions to anything. You're literally just playing a D flat 7 there. So let's try this with our first tritone sub. We're subbing the G9 at the very end of the bar so that we can slip down right into our 1, our C major 7. Here's our quarter note. We're gonna go nice and slow. Again, you can play my language or you can use your own language on that D flat 7, sharp 11. Listen to the way this sounds. This is amazing here. 1, 2, 3, and so we're just improvising here over our regular 2-5-1. Let's do it again. We're just feeling our way out. Maybe you're just playing the left hand voicings, just getting used to it. But notice that chromatic movement that happens. Let's repeat, try it again. So we're just using white keys on every chord except this D flat 7, sharp 11. And you can use my 16th note run there. Try it again. One more time here. Okay, so I'm playing the bass line there, and I'm not playing that D flat every single time, and that's key. Like I said, you don't have to call your mom and tell her you're doing this. You don't have to tell the bass player that I'm playing a tritone sub. It's gonna sound great either way. Look at this voicing I have here for the D flat 7, right? What if I were to play the G with this? That's just a G7, flat 9, flat 13. That's how closely these are related. If we look at a G7 chord, just the basic bare bones of a G dominant 7, we've got our root, we've got our 3rd, B natural, and we've got our 7th, F. If we look at a D flat 7 chord, just the bare bones, we've got our root, we've got our 3rd, F, and we've got our 7th, C flat or B. It's the same 3rd and 7th for G and D flat. They're so closely related and these notes are so, they both function to end with a very strong tone in C that it just, you can't even tell. You really can't even tell. So, but we can tell because we can add a little bit of tension. I mean, you know what I mean? How great is that? How great is that? But it doesn't have to be just the 5 chord. We can, in fact, sub out any of these, add a 5 chord and sub it out with the tritone going anywhere. And again, just to think about it is I'm using a dominant 7 sharp 11 from a half step above my target. So here, instead of putting the tritone sub on the G7 chord, we're going to do a tritone sub going into the G7, meaning that we're going to use an A flat 7 sharp 11 into the G9. And I have another bit of language here. Just a little, I'll walk up. Again, this will be an A flat Lydian dominant, right? So an A flat major scale with a sharp 4 and a dominant 7th. That's all you need. That sound, again, you don't want to do just a regular A flat. I mean, you could do whatever you want. But for me, this Lydian dominant sound is what you hear most of the best players using with this because it's kind of ambiguous. Like it doesn't lock you into, and we're going to D flat. Like it really has like I don't really belong anywhere, but I'm going to end up, bam, here on this G9. Let's try this one. This is fun. You like this. 1, 2, 3, and. Right? You know what I mean? You can use these anywhere, going to any chord. So you're just improvising here however you want. Just trying to hit that A flat 7 on beat 4 of the first bar. I mean, and the bass player doesn't have to do it with you. It sounds good either way. One more time here. You know what I'm saying? And adding that little bit of language, that really locks it in. That Lydian dominant language that you can get, that really helps us to understand, at least helps our ear to understand where this is going. And nothing is going to make more sense than this next example, I think, for this. So now let's put a tritone sub going to the A minor. Now this is a perfect example of what I was talking about when I asked you, did you know you could put a 5 chord going anywhere, right? So originally, this is just C major going to A minor, right? The tritone of C major is G flat. But why wouldn't we put that going to A minor? Because G flat, that's not the 5 to A minor. The 5 of A minor is E7, right? So what's the tritone of E7? It's B flat. But you don't have to understand any of that if you don't. Don't worry about it because all you have to know is I can approach any chord from the dominant 7 sharp 11 chord a half step up. That's all you gotta know. And so here I wanted to take a little bit more time with our tritone sub. And by the way, this is still a tritone sub, right? Because we're still subbing out what would be the 5th, the dominant 7 5th of A minor. So here we have a B flat 7 sharp 11, and we're going to do two full beats of this. And again, that's B flat Lydian dominant, right? So that's B flat C D sharp 4 E natural F G dominant 7 A flat. And we can get these great sounds out of this, leading to the A minor. So if we're here, that's the sound. That gives us that stank face supreme, right? That's like all stank face all the time. So you improvise on the 2, on the 5, on the 1, however you want, but on those last 2 beats of the third bar, I want you to throw in that tritone sub, that B flat 7, sharp 11, going to the A minor. And you can use my language if you like. You can try improvising on that B flat Lydian dominant if you like. In fact, you should try both. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Back to the top. One more time, one more time. I mean, we're not quite at Peter Martin level here with these, but that's getting close. Like that, we're approaching baby Peter Martin level there with these. I mean, and again, I just want to reiterate, you can put these in wherever you want, or you can not put them in wherever you want. Like eventually this gets used as one of your devices to create or release tension. And that's the beauty of them, is they kind of like instantly do that. So we have one more opportunity here to add a tritone sub. That's of course in the very last bar. And again, we are going to, A minor. If this was an A7, that's the 5 going back to D minor 7. So what's the tritone away from A? E flat. So we can use, again, our dominant 7 sharp 11 chord, just a half step up from our target, which in this case is D minor 9, D minor 7. And again, I'll give you a little bit of language. We're going to use our E flat Lydian dominant scale, right? So major scale with a sharp 4, sharp 11, and that dominant 7. Very important scale. And so we can use a little bit of common language here. How great is that? So instead of just A minor, all white keys, going back to D minor, that's a little bland. But we can be on A minor, and it gets us that woo kind of idea, right? Let's try this one. You know what to do. 1, 2, 3, and. You know what I mean? Keep at it. One more time here, one more time. I mean, you're seeing where this goes, right? This has all been very tasteful, and I've left you a lot of room to do what you want here. But what if we just went buck wild here? What if we went tritone sub crazy, subbing out everything? Don't tell me you haven't thought about it. You can do it. This is really fun. You could actually play this as written, or you could improvise in the gaps there. But this is a nice little exercise to just try to get all of these tritone subs at our hands. So here we have our D minor 9. Fourth beat, we're going to sub out here this A flat 7. Fourth beat of the next bar, sub out, right? It kind of plays itself. This is why players use this, because it just helps you, that's all your ideas. That's all you need to do. It gives you such great ideas. It feeds you inspiration. It feeds you tension that is built in. So you don't have to think what do I do to get all this tension? Just sub it out, and it's already there for you, and it's ready to go. Let's try it. Stoked. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. more times, 2 more times. Have fun with this. Use your own stuff too. Tritone subs, you know them, you love them. Peter Martin knows them. Peter Martin loves them. They are key to really unlocking sort of really easy tension that we can put in any situation. Again, a couple of things to remember here. You can literally put in any dominant 7 sharp 11 chord a half step above your target. Try it. Some are going to work better than others, but it's worth exploring. 2, you're going to want to use that Lydian dominant sound. You're going to want to use a dominant 7 sharp 11, at least to start. There's definitely like room to grow for this. Like there's things that we can do with minor chords, with major chords, depending on where you're going. But that takes a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of experience. This you can get going. It's always going to work. It's always going to sound really good. And then 3, try to use a little bit of language in there too. Like use a little bit of that Lydian dominant language where you're really getting some of the leading tones that are sort of lending you their gravity towards your target. And 4, 2, 3, 4, have fun. It's really, this is like the most fun. Stank face should not be heavy. It should be super fun. Like it is a little joke you're telling everybody like, oh, you think we're in this key? Bam. I'm going to slip out of that for a second and you're going to really enjoy that. So enjoy the Tritone subs, everybody. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe, of course. Don't forget naturally to go to openstudiojazz.com for all of your jazz lesson needs. Until next time, happy practicing, y'all. Later.